Get ready for truth bombs and guidance from conservative leaders and entrepreneurs from God-fearing, freedom-loving, truth-telling, patriotic Americans. Welcome to Patriots with Grit. Now let's jump into today's episode with your host, Darren Ross.
I think you'll have to agree, Randy, for the last 36 months, last 3 years, something's been off in our country. Have you felt it?
Off.
Have you felt it in your bones?
Off, my Lord. It's all over the place.
I mean, I could tell back in February 2020 that it was just way off. And, you know, that's when I got my head out of the sand and I started paying attention to things. And that's when I actually started, you know, wishing I would not have slept through history class. You know, I hated history. I hated political science. I had nothing to do with any of it. But so I started paying attention to history and reading some books. And then once I realized that the history that we were taught in schools had either been revised, rewritten, or removed,
Yep.
I started looking at, at truth when it comes to history. How about you?
Oh, I'm an idiot when it comes to truth. But this whole last 2 years has taught me more about history than I've ever even known.
Oh, my gosh. So a few weeks ago, we were at a large conference, and we were in the media room conducting all kinds of interviews with, the uppity-ups of the nation.
Yep.
And our guest today happened to sneak in the media room kind of like under the wire, like through the back door, through a hole in the wall. And he just happened to end up at our media table.
Well, and it was like, I think you need to interview me.
Yeah, and some lady came up and said, "Hey, I've got a guy. I got a guy. I got a guy that you need to interview." And we're like, "Who is this guy?" This lady's like, "His name is Larry Ballard, and he's from Reed Springs, Missouri, near Branson." I'm like, "Never heard of him." She's like,
I thought he was going to talk about making moonshine.
or throat rolls. Either one. So once we got to know Larry sent both of us a copy of his book, and I'm going to tell you what, I'm an avid reader. I have like 1,250 books in my library, and I have because I have bad ADD, I literally have like 34 books next to my bed. Okay. Seriously. And about 33 of them I've started reading, but I haven't finished. Okay, so Larry sent Randy and me both books right here. This is an incredible book. I'm going to advise you, if you don't have it, get it right here. The Liberty Crusade. It's the only book I'm reading now, and that's God's honest truth. If I had a Bible, I'd put my hand on the Bible. That's God's honest truth. That's the only book I'm reading. I can't put it down. It's absolutely fascinating. So with that, we're going to bring on today's guest, Larry Ballard, the author of the Liberty Crusade. Larry, thanks for coming on today and gracing us with your presence here at Patriots with Grit.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background, your story, why people would want to follow you, listen to you, and pay attention to what you're saying.
Well, I said just what you said. I was down at the most recent Reawaken America tour, and thanks to one of their speakers, she gave me 4 minutes of her time. And I walked out on the stage, and the first thing I said is, I'm the only speaker that you're going to hear here today who you've never heard of. Why? Because God has kept me in the cleft of the rock until the last minute, till America and the world was on the brink of collapse. So my story is that in 1968, I had a motorcycle wreck. And I careened off a cliff into a tree, was unconscious for 4 hours. My spirit left my body, and I went to heaven. And while I was there, God gave me an assignment that spanned all that time, all the way up till slightly past now. And he gave me a set of instructions. He said, I'm going to have you work in a number of strategically significant jobs, because every one of them in the end is going to be important to understanding what is being done to collapse America and the world. So real quickly, my job history. Going through college, I worked building skyscrapers. And I fell, the event that triggered that was important as I worked with thermite. So when we had 9/11, I knew that those buildings were not brought down by those planes, but by thermite as controlled demolition. I then worked for Monsanto Chemical Company. God had me do that. So early on, I would learn about GMOs. Then he had me work for Atomic Energy of Canada. So I would learn that energy and food, that's now two of the most important necessities of life, could be controlled to control the people. And also, I was part of socialized medicine. So I understood that socialized medicine was a control mechanism. I saw people, two friends of mine, that died from cancer before they ever got to see a doctor. Then after that, I worked for a firm in Europe. Now, why would I do that? It was a French firm, because God wanted me to see the formation of the European Union so that I could see that 29 nations were about to lose their sovereignty. They were going to become trade unions. They were going to first lose their sovereignty. They were going to become a trade market. They were going to have a common currency, and that was going to be the formation of the beginning of the beast system. And that would refer me to the Bible, because I have a strong biblical background. And that refers to Revelation, where it says in the book of Revelation that as the beast system is set up, there shall be 10 servile nations. And it says that there shall be 10 kings upon whose heads crowns shall not be set, but for 1 hour with the Antichrist. So that gave me an understanding of the formation of the European Union. And we're seeing now that they're trying to do the same thing all over the world, in America and so forth and so on. And so basically, that was my job history. The other thing that turned out to be very important is I had a patent. And that patent took me to China, and I was there just before Tiananmen Square. I talked to some of those kids just days before that massacre, kids who were probably killed shortly after I had talked to them. But I had a unique chance to stick my head in their sweatshops and see what China was going to do to try to take away the position of the global superpower from the United States. So basically, that's my work history, a little bit of my travel history. And what God said was that he was going to have me have a number of accidents, because when I came out, it would be a difficult, challenging time. And he wanted me to know that nothing was going to happen to me. I wouldn't come out until my hair was salt and pepper, until America was on the brink. So I'm now 75 years old. I've been waiting all that time to come out. So real quickly, I fell from a 5-story building in the construction industry, never hit the ground. A ceiling collapsed 3 stories above me. All kinds of debris fell on me. I got up and walked out. There's a scar across my forehead right here that should have killed me. I was in a cave accident. And voila, I got to the hospital. They touched it with a swab and the artery burst. So long story short, several accidents later, I graduated. I was on an airplane out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in a twin-engine prop, and the engine blew. The plane caught on fire. People were panicking. And God said, it's time for you to graduate. I stood up and I screamed at the top of my lungs. God says not one person on this plane is going to have one hair on their head harmed. At the last second, the pilot righted that plane, and we hopped down the runway. The fire trucks were out. It was in the newspapers the next day. But when I got off the plane, everybody applauded, because they knew they had been a part of a divine intervention from God. So that led me then to what God told me I had to study. So he said, you've got to read the Bible and the Quran. You've got to read climatology, sociology, anthropology, geology, because all of those things are going to be important in understanding what's going on. We didn't know global warming was going to be a factor at that time, but I need to understand climate change. So basically, that was the preparation, and now is the time to deliver the message. So we're at that point where God said to me way back then that the world is a circle never ending, never beginning. So what he's basically telling me with that is God knows the end before the beginning, and the truth will set people free. So we're at a point now where we can tell the story of what's been done to us to collapse not only America, but the entire world. And it's all based in the real history of the United States and the real history of the world.
So, Larry, when you were working in socialized medicine, did you have the opportunity to work side by side with Dr. Fauci?
I missed that opportunity. I did have a dartboard of him.
Okay, because I figured, he has to be socialist to do what he's doing, or maybe even communist, So I thought maybe in your comings and goings of all the different career changes, you might have bumped into the Honorable Anthony Fauci and maybe had a chance to work with him for a little while, but I guess not. So here's our question. We all know that what's going on now in our so-called government is just it's a show, it's a movie, it's all it's just a distraction to keep people glued to their TVs, between their entertainment and their sports. The media can say and do whatever and get everybody to believe it. So we all know that what we hear and see is absolutely untrue. So we know that there are other people pulling the strings. Would you say, Randy?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of shadow government going on.
That's not. He said the word shadow government. He needs to have a tinfoil hat on for that. But let's pretend that. Let's just say. Let's play devil's advocate and say Randy is correct in saying there is a shadow government. Larry, here's the question: who are the global elite and what's their end-game agenda? And the reason I ask that is because in your book that I'm 4 chapters into right now, you basically say the financial elite, the global elite, the shadow government are pretty much pulling the strings worldwide, globally. So in your opinion, who are the global elite and what's their end-game agenda?
All right. First of all, where'd they start? They started in feudalism, which is just another name for communism. That's in the colonial era where the kings were basically monarchs who told people what they could do. They had no rights, didn't have property rights. That's what brought people here in the first place, to get freedom from feudalism, which is just another word for communism. So basically, that's the system that we're trying to escape. Now, how did they get a global power structure? What they do is they are replicable tipping points. And the first thing they found out was during the 100-Year War. Now, this is back in the colonial period between France and England. England went broke. And that made the first replicable pattern that created the global elite. So what happened is the King of England went to the Rothschilds and said, I'm broke. I need to borrow money so I can fight this war. He said, King, I'll load you any amount of money you want, but I have one little stipulation. I'll print your money from now till perpetuity. That was the birth of the first central bank. And from that point forward, they understood that they could cause wars, fund both sides, break both economies, and enforce a central bank. Now, why is that important? Stalin said that implementation of a central bank is 90% of communizing a country. So basically, step one is to break the nation financially and impose what basically is a communist government. So basically, that's what they've done to us. Now, what does that structure look like today? You could be sitting right next to a globalist and you wouldn't know it. So basically, a globalist, by definition, is anyone who has bought into the agenda to end all sovereign nations and create a one world government by consent or by force. It can be the president, because one of those tipping points was when they bought the first president. McKinley was actually put in office by the 3 wealthiest men in this nation because he was pro-big business and his adversary was against big business. So at that point, they knew they could buy presidents. So every president we've had since then, with the possible 2 or 3 exceptions, have not been elected. They have been groomed, financed, and selected. So basically, it could be that the president is a globalist, that most of our Congress are globalist, that most of our elected officials at a local and state level are globalist, that most of our judges are globalist. So what did I just say? All 3 of the branches of government have been usurped over time because they have gotten control of the money. And with money, they can buy almost anybody. If you have enough money, you can buy power and influence at every strata of society. So it can be the lawyer next door. It can be the news media guy who lives down the street. It can be the anchor on CNN. It can be the professor at a university. Anybody who is in a position to have power and influence, if they are willing to sell out to the agenda of ending all sovereign nations and creating a one world government, they can be called globalist. And then they have to have a governing body. And that governing body came about as a result of World War II, where we formed the European Union, because if you're going to control the world, you have to have a structure to control it. So we got the World Bank, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, we got NATO, we got the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and then we got a whole body of community organizing groups at the bottom. And in the very middle of it is the media, which is the mouthpiece that ties the bottom and the top together and then indoctrinates us. So those are who the global elite are.
Okay, so my question is, when you talk about judges being globalist, what is it that's about them? Because, you know, the judges aren't on the financial level that the elite are.
Which judges are you referring to? Supreme Court judges or local judges?
They're still on lower than the elites, I would think. So my question is, are they just influenced by the money? Are they truly globalist in their mindset?
Well, there's people who drank the Kool-Aid. Okay. There are people on the left who truly believe, but there's also a lot of people who want money power and influence. Hollywood would be an example of that. The people there, if you want to be the president of the United States, you're going to tell me you don't have an ego. You want to tell me that you're not impressed by yourself and that you're not almost willing to sell your soul if you can have that platform of power. So basically, there are minions. So at the top, you've got the wealthiest families in the world. They go by several names. The 13 families. They go by the financial elite. They go by the Illuminati. Doesn't make any difference. It's the wealthiest people in the world. They are the brain pool and the money pool that drives everything. And then below them are all of the minions, the feet on the ground. Let me give you probably the most important set of minions. The Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission both state that their stated objective is to end all sovereign nations and create a one world government. Yet, did you know that almost anybody in Washington, almost anybody in government, almost anybody of influence in this country, real influence, belongs to one of those two organizations that is committed to ending the sovereignty of the United States and every sovereign nation? So that tells you the degree of power that they have and how much they have been able to buy that power with money.
So just tell me real quick, if you had to guess, what percent of Congress is in that category?
Most of the Democrats and a large portion of the Republicans, it's just a guess, I would say 75% of everybody in Washington is bought and paid for. And here's what they do. They find bright young people, let's say Barack Obama, and they...
Did you say Barry Soetoro? Barry Soetoro?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did.
Well, you know, Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Obama, you know, I thought up until 2007 our elections were legitimate. But then I realized, you know, out of nowhere, just you hear this name Barack Obama, and I'm like, Barack Obama? You know, he'd been a senator for like, 7 days or something, then all of a sudden he's just put into power with the President of the United States. I'm like, this is all BS, and that means being stupid. And I mean, it's crazy. So I didn't mean to interject there, but when you said Barack Obama, I just heard in my mind Barry Soetoro and Mike.
Don't forget the middle name, Hussein.
Yeah.
Well, here I'm gonna take it in a different direction too. Now, not one word in that book was ever written without the direct direction from God. He tells me everything I have to learn, and I have to go out and learn it. So I'm going to give you a quick side story. I'm watching Barack Obama the first time he's on television announcing he's going to run for senator. Everybody with me, we're watching a football game. My God, he's an orator. He's going to be the president of the United States. And I stood up and I said, no, he's the Antichrist. And then I went back and I said, God, if you want me to tell people that, I got to have some facts. So God gives me these assignments. He says, go read all of the prophets. And most of what I'm going to tell you was in Isaiah. I can't remember it all off the top of my head, but I have in the book a train of events that will convince a lot of people that he really is the Antichrist. In the Bible, it says, you shall know him by, he shall come in peace. 2 weeks after being president, he gets the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. He'll come in flatteries. Hollywood was all over him, and so is the media. He'll come against a small country, Israel. He'll be against women. He is what? He is probably gay, and he is definitely a Muslim who believes in Sharia law, and on down the list goes. And the last one, he shall be called the Anointed One, the name designated for Christ. So at any rate, that's a digression. So take me back to where you wanted to go.
If he's against women, how does Michelle fit into that? Or Mike, or Michelle, or Mike, or Michael, or Michelle? I mean, is it maybe that's Latin for Michelle or Mike? I'm trying to figure out if he's against women. How does she, her fit into that? Well, go ahead. I don't mean to digress.
Well. There are some people who say that Michelle is a Michael. That's as far as I'm going to go. I like to deal with facts.
Or at least she identifies as a Michael.
Right.
But I don't mean to get you off track, Larry. So
we didn't mean to.
So in your book, The Liberty Crusade, that everybody should get, you talk about the key leaders in the United States who are members of the Trilateral Commission and people that go back, decades who have been members of the Trilateral Commission. And Larry has stated facts in here. I don't like just information. I like facts. I like sources. I like to be able to go and dig it up and see it.
He's been tutored by the big guy.
He's been tutored by the big guy, and that's not Barry. That's not Barry Soetoro. So what is the source, Larry? I mean, we all know there's the financial elite are pulling the strings. What is the source of their power? I mean, how can they just be so powerful that all nations, all governments, all industry, all banking follow them? What is their secret sauce?
The first thing we said is money. They basically collapsed an economy. Here, let's go to 1933, and we'll see how they got control of the United States. And then remember, there's nothing new. They do the same thing in every nation in the world. So we were put on their financial system in 1933 when Wilson lied to us and gave us the Federal Reserve. Just a few years later, in 1929, we had the Great Depression. In 1933, in the midst of that depression, we declared bankruptcy. Now, in the congressional record, something that almost nobody pays attention to, it says, and this is a paraphrase, that as of this day, all U.S. officials and offices exist in name only, in de facto presence. The receivers of the bankruptcy of the United States have ended the republic and formed a new government for the United States. And that new government is a democracy, a socialist communist order. And bam, right that second, we had a shadow government because they embedded thousands of bureaucrats into our government to write the regulations that control us, to write all of the bills that none of our congressmen and senator ever read. They just hand them to them and says, here is a 2,000-page omnibus bill, and all we're asking for is $1 trillion. Just say yes. That's how they got control of our government initially, and they do that to every government in the world.
Up until like the last couple of years, I mean, even through the last couple of years, anytime we hear these fake politicians or fake government leaders, whether it's the illegitimate president or whoever, they always refer to it as our democracy. Our democracy. Mm-hmm. They never call it or refer to it as a
constitutional
republic ever. So, but does that go all the way back to history when we were in school? I mean, did they? Because, like I said, I slept through history. I couldn't tell you anything about history. But did they call it democracy back then? And are all of our citizens, are most of the people our age in our 50s and younger, are we used to hearing the word democracy and not even pretty much know what a republic is?
Absolutely. So let me take you back. So we've got the Congressional Congress going on, and we're writing our Constitution. And Ben Franklin walks out, and a woman says, "Sir, can you tell us what form of government you've given us?" And he says, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." So what is a republic? It is the very reason we came here. It is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, which requires an educated population. That's why the first thing we did was found Harvard, so people could learn to read what? The Bible, so they could read pamphlets from pamphleteers and understand what was politically happening in the world. So when they went to the polling box to vote, they would be informed people, and they would be making their vote not based upon personal vested interest, but on the best interest of the nation as a whole. We've lost that. They called democracy, our founding fathers, they called it mobocracy, because they knew that once those least willing or least able to work found out that they could get money out of the public coffer, they would drive the nation into debt, and it would result in chaos. And that's where the whole world is right now. We are a mobocracy, not a democracy, and not a republic.
And I think you tell me if I was right or not. Thomas Jefferson, was he one that said a well-educated public?
There's a couple things that I never miss any day ever, and one of them is Cardio Miracle. If I could have, I would have started taking this when I was 20.
Since I've been taking Cardio Miracle on a very consistent basis, my recovery time is amazing.
I really want to be a walking testimonial of what Cardio Miracle does for the body. I feel good all over.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple. I have seen Cardio Miracle improve the lives of many of my patients with many different types of chronic conditions.
This is something that's actually made a huge difference. And it's staying that way. It's not just a fluke, it's real.
Cardio Miracle for me and my husband has saved our life. literally.
Cardio Miracle for us, for me, for my family, was a lifesaver.
We will never be without Cardio Miracle.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass. When you create nitric oxide, you are igniting the spark of life in the cell. It is the miracle molecule. That's why we called this Cardio Miracle, because of nitric oxide and what it can do for the whole body.
And it's
Yes.
funny, it's how ironic that we have no source of being well educated without doing the work ourselves, because the media is not going to help us with that.
Well, they've taken the education system over too.
Yes.
Communism, there's a plan that the communism, they look at things very long term. So they want to start 30 or 40 years in advance by propaganda, by taking over Hollywood. So Stalin said, if I could control Hollywood, I could control the world. And I think it was Vladimir Lenin who said that if you give me your children for 4 years, the seed I planted in them, the seed of communism, will never be taken out. So they start by brainwashing us to get us to believe. And they tell us, like Fox was doing for the longest time, they tell us the truth, mingled with a half-truth and an out-and-out lie, and then spun in such a way that we can't figure out what possibly could be the truth. And so we're just confused and we're vulnerable to more lies. So they basically start with that, and then they get control of the monetary system, and they buy all the centers of power, all of them.
You know, Larry, we keep our ear to the ground pretty much with a lot of organizations and what we consider reputable people. And, you know, I heard a survey the other day that said something to the effect of upwards of 74% of young people like 24 and under are perfectly fine with socialism. They think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
And
because they've been taught to. Go ahead.
I have three kids, and I'm just amazed, you know, and you know how many people that are our kids' age, you know, they have no idea what's going on. They don't have a care in the world, I don't think, really what's going on. You know, they're just, you know, put on a mask, we'll put on a mask. Tell us to social distance, we'll social distance. You know, what else can we do for you, sir? You know, it's like govern me harder, daddy. And it's like, you know, it's like what can we do that people our age that have kids and or grandkids to pull them away from this nonsense that they've been indoctrinated with all through government schools for 13 years?
It's all about knowledge. If we know the true history, and if the parents get involved in the education system, not everybody can homeschool, but you can follow what your kids are being taught. And if you know the truth, then you can tell them the truth. And you just triggered something else. I used to live in Chicago, and at Grant's Farm, the night that Barack Obama's presidency was announced, he said, we are 5 days away from the fundamental transformation of America. Very few people understood that that was code for transferring the wealth from the masses to the poor, redistribution of wealth, pure communism. And that's where he was taking us.
And I think most of the country were just rah all behind him. A lot of the country, they were just brainwashed and just thought it was the greatest thing. And I think number one, because he was black, or you know, he wasn't black when he was running. When he was politicking, he was half white. Remember that. But then when he won, right, he was black. So, I mean, we'll have to remember that. So we don't want Barry to forget that.
I didn't know he was a chameleon.
Well, yeah, he's a chameleon. He's more than a chameleon, I think. So, Larry, who are the global elite puppet masters, and who are the puppets?
Well, you've got the 13 families. You've got the George Soroses of the world. You've got whoever controls the money are the puppet masters.
Tell us, wait, I got to stop you. Talk to us real quick about, you may not be able to recite all 13 families. Give us some names of some families that people would resonate with.
Actually, I probably can't remember any of the families because it wasn't a turning point in history, so it's not a focal point of my book. So I know there's one in China, but I can't remember the name of it. So I'm going to have to draw a blank on that. I apologize.
The Rothschilds were one, weren't they?
Well,
or does it go further?
They're not one of the 13 families, but they're one of the central global elite. Okay. Yes, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. In terms of, I stay more with the U.S. government. It's the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers that are the key movers and shakers in the United States of America.
So you're saying there were families
and JP Morgan, anybody who controls the money controls the power, the levers of power. And then maybe I'll try to answer your question with a famous quote. There's a quote that says, let's see if I can remember it off the top of my head, is basically says that they control us from the bottom up and the top down. So you said at one point you were going to ask, what can we do? If we understand what they've done to us and how they've done it, the interesting thing is they tell us it's too complex for you to fix. You can't fix it. We can't fix it one law at a time, but we can fix it in very significant ways. So let's take just that, for example, because it goes to the question that you're asking. So what you've got at the bottom are the community organizers like Barack Obama. You've got the unions like SCIU that he was a part of. You've got the CFR and the Trilateral Commission. You've got those organizations that want to take our guns, those organizations that want to take our kids, etc. Those are the feet on the ground. And what they do is there's a saying, a quote that says the organized minority, who are part of the global elite, who are their minions, will always defeat the unorganized majority. So why are they organized? Because they have the money. The George Soroses are funding them, the Rockefellers are funding them, and they control those organizations. And then the talking heads in the middle, in the media, go out and film them, and they make it sound like gay rights is absolutely the will of the people, when 0.5% at most of the people want it. And then the president, who at that time happened to be, in my opinion, a gay president, comes in and says, that's the will of the people. We've got to have same-sex marriage. They do that over and over and over and over again and pass laws that are against us, that harm us, that destroy us, and that tear America down and drive us into debt and demoralize us. So basically, their feet on the ground are the minions. The talking heads are the media and the education system, and at the top are the people who are our judges and our legislators and the money people, and it's all one big circle. And that's how they control us.
They've got our heads spinning. When we think that we're getting something good, I don't even know what to believe anymore.
Well,
believe that God is in control.
That's about
because what God showed me when I had that near-death experience. I want to take it back. Anybody who's not a Christian, I'm sorry, but this is what God showed me. This is not the end. This is not the time for the rapture. This is not the time for the tribulation. America has been blessed, and England has been blessed because way back we entered into covenant with Abraham. And what happened is the two lost tribes of Israel went up the Euphrates River, ended up in England. As horrible a nation as England is, it's been blessed because the Israelites left England and came to America, and the first thing they did was get on their knees and pray to God and enter into Abraham's covenant. And so God has blessed that nation like no other. And he said that I will make of you Abraham's seed, a great nation and great nations, and your children shall be as the sands of the seas and the stars of the sky. So basically that is the mother nation, England, and we are the wings on that lion. We are the great nation, singular. And so now, why was that important? Because God knew in advance that England was going to be the colonial power upon which the sun would never set, and that our language would be the universal language of this world. Therefore, it had to be the language that was used to spread Christianity across the world. And now America is going to be used again. Mark my words. One thing that we should be talking about very soon is why China is absolutely, utterly, and completely going to collapse, creating a void that America will fill and rise to absolute, undisputed economic superpower. And as that happens, we are going to have a completely new economic system. The kingdoms of man are going to fall, and the kingdom of God is going to reign. We're going to have a period where there are very few, if any, wars, and where we have absolute signs, wonders, and miracles across this entire world. That's where we're at. That's the blessing. That's the end of what's coming. And I can substantiate that with historical facts.
Well, I want to ask this, and you can tell me to be quiet. But how does Trump fit into this? Because he's made a lot of statements. We will be wealthy again. And it's not just saying we're going to get jobs. I think there's an underlying meaning to that. And I think it is this economic change that we can be headed for.
Well, I'll give you a half biblical and a half factual answer. Did you know that there's a coin over in England right now that's got Trump on one side and King Cyrus on the other?
Really?
The biblical connection is that Cyrus rebuilt the wall. So there are those that say that Trump is God's Cyrus. He is here to build our wall, to protect our border, to protect our nation. He was ordained. And then there's a prophecy by Kim Clement, who I believe was the most famous American prophet there was, all the way back in 07, 4 of them. And he said that his trumpet would be called to be his David, Donald Trump. And then he said that he would serve 2 terms, and people don't listen carefully. He said in the middle of that, there would be an interruption, and there would be someone called out during that interruption that would open the door for the 2nd term. And that person's first name was Clay. And I was thinking that might be the Clay Clark of the Reawaken America tour that is intricately connected to Donald J. Trump, who I believe is anointed by God. Now, why did Trump turn America's economy around, and why will he turn it around again? Because he understands one of those fundamental replicable things that they do to us. Any nation that becomes a global superpower must do the following things. They must control the natural resources of the world to a greater degree than anyone else. They must control the manufacturing of the world to a greater degree than anyone else. They must control the shipping, which means the sea lanes. Who's got the biggest nation in the world right now? I mean, the biggest navy with ports all over the world. The United States does. Those 3 things are then converted, sold off to create money. So what did Donald Trump do? He came in and declared an economic war against China. He said, I am imposing tariffs on you so that your goods are too expensive, so we'll have to reindustrialize. He said, I am going to open up our oil, and I'm going to open up our gas, and I'm going to open our steel. I'm going to give America back its natural resources, back its manufacturing, back its trade, back its money, and the stock market went from 10,000 to 30,000. When he comes back, the difference is the global elite are going to be sucking air, and they're going to be tons of people in Washington that are just gone, and the obstacles that stood before him are not going to be there, and there's going to be a vacuum. When China falls, America's going to fill it, and that formula is just going to be replicated. Donald Trump knows how to do it, and he'll do it to a far greater degree than it was done before. Mark my words, America will be used by God to usher in an unparalleled period of peace, prosperity, and righteousness on the earth. And now here's something that almost nobody knows.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and due to your incredible support, the original My Slippers are almost completely sold out. As a special thank you, I am launching my brand new all-season slippers, slides, and sandals for as low as $29.98. This is a limited time offer, so go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code and you'll get all my new footwear for as low as $29.98. My all-season slippers are made with my exclusive 4-layer design that you won't find in any other slipper. They're finished with a breathable fabric so you can wear them all year round. And my new slides and sandals are made with patented impact gel, making them ultra comfortable and extremely durable. I guarantee they'll be the most comfortable footwear you'll ever own. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen now to get your very own all-season slippers, slides, and sandals for as low as $29.98 with your promo code. This is an introductory offer and it won't last long, so order now.
The kingdoms of man are going to fall, but there's a replicable pattern for establishing the kingdom that I just described. For a 33-year period in American history, something profound happened. Right after the Civil War, we built a transcontinental railroad system. We put tariffs against England. So we developed the Industrial Revolution. We shared that technology, the railroad technology and the Industrial Revolution technology, with all of the world, particularly with Germany and Russia. They were building railroads. They were being a threat against the supremacy of England. And so guess what? England says, we're going to lose our power. They formed, nobody knows this, World War I was perpetrated on us to collapse Europe, knowing that England was an island that would be protected. Their money came from their colonies and would be unaffected. They killed 15 million people to keep control of the global trade system in the world. So basically, it's all replicable. It can all be replicated over and over and over again. And so now Donald Trump is going to come back in, and China's going to fall, and it's going to be replicated on the behalf of the U.S. So what was that economic system? It was called the American economic system. And what we did is we shared our knowledge and our technology, and every nation of the world was being equalized and elevated. And when you equalize and elevate nations because they've got prosperity, you kill the central reason for war. So that was another reason that the global elite had to collapse the United States. So in 34 years, of what I call a godly system, I call it equalitarianism, America supplanted England, which had been the economic superpower for 300 years. We were undisputedly the number one superpower in the world. The youngest nation in the world became the economic superpower of the world in 34 years. That system will be re-implemented under Donald Trump.
I think I learned more here in about 50 minutes than I did 2 years.
He's got me wanting to dance in my chair.
Larry, tell our viewers and our audience about your book here, The Liberty Crusade. The Liberty Crusade by Larry Ballard. Talk to us a little bit about your book, what's in it, and where people can get it.
Okay. It's first and foremost history. And what I tell people is, if you know the true history, you now have the truth, and the truth can set you free. And so as we were talking earlier before we came on air, what we'll do if we do additional segments is, if you buy this book and read it and have it as a resource, any news story that comes, you will be able to go to and see where it originated and what it means and what we can do to turn the tables on what's being done to us. Now, I need to tell you a real quick side story. I submitted that book to every major publisher in the world, in the country at least, and they all rejected me. And Harrison House rejected me.
Really?
And guess what happened? I got a phone call 2 months later, and I said, surely they didn't change their opinion. And I got this woman on the phone, and she's laughing, and she says, Mr. Ballard, did you ever get that book published? And she says, no, don't answer that. I'm going to answer it for you. You did not, because you told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They're never going to let you publish that book. But guess what? I'm leaving Harrison House. I'm opening up my own small publishing firm. I have a small chain of Christian bookstores, and God told me that he would bless my business if I would publish your book for nothing. This book would have never gotten out if God himself did not give me the plan and did not guide me and did not promise me that this book was going to open people's eyes and empower them for us to take this nation and this world back. This is God's playbook for how to defeat the global elite. And here's what it comes down to. If we understand that history, we will understand step by step by step by step what they've done to us. And now if you go to The Art of War, Donald Trump's favorite book and one of my favorite books, we understand that if we understand what the enemy has done, we can become him. If we can become him, we can anticipate what he's going to do. If we anticipate what he's going to do, we can use what he has done and is going to do to defeat him. So the enemy has inadvertently given us the means to defeat him. And what I say basically in the book is we can go step by step by step, but the overview, the high level of how we defeat them is just by understanding we came here for a set of reasons. And there are 12 foundation stones that made America the greatest nation in the world. And if we know what those are, we wanted personal property, for example. If we know what they are, all they do to destroy us is they take them out one at a time. And if we put them back in, it's plug and play. Put those back in, and we are great again. So, for example, as this unfolds, we can talk about it later, I guarantee you, the UN's going to collapse. I guarantee you the Fed is going to collapse. I guarantee you we're going to have a completely new economic system. I guarantee you that we're not going to have the Federal Reserve. It is unconstitutional. It was deemed unconstitutional by 6 different Supreme Court cases. We're not going to have the IRS. We are going to have a completely different economic system. God wins, they lose. We restore those 12 foundation stones, and America becomes the government that God intended it to be. And the world is a great place to live in. And America and people around the world will get on their knees and thank God and said, no man did this. It was done by the power of God. And we're going to have God on earth and prayer everywhere, including in the schools.
Larry, where can people buy your book? And I would highly recommend. And when I said earlier, the
only place is Amazon.
When I said earlier in the interview, literally, I have put all other books aside. This is the only book I'm reading right now. I'm 4 chapters in. I think there's 11 or 12 chapters in this, Larry.
I don't remember the number of chapters.
8 chapters. You know what? Randy, I got an autographed copy. I don't know if you did.
I did too.
Oh, Randy got an autographed copy.
You're not privileged.
So, Larry, people can get this book from you from Amazon. Tell us about your website and where people can possibly find you and keep up with you.
Real simple. My name, LarryBallard.com.
LarryBallard, BALLARD.com.
It's in 2 places right there.
And if you want to go there and you're not quite sure you want to buy this book, it'll tell you about it. And I think that you'll probably end up clicking and buying it.
Well, I don't see why anybody would not invest in your book. What's the price on Amazon for this, Larry?
I think it's $18.95. I think
best $20.
I'm not into the money. I'm not. I didn't write this book to make money, but I think it's $18.95.
Okay, Larry, can we have you back?
I wrote this book to walk in people's eyes.
Can we have you back for some follow-up interviews?
How could you even ask?
Okay,
of course you can.
We're going to do that, but I want to ask you.
How dumb was that?
Right now, as we get ready to close out, give our viewers and our audience and our listeners, give them no more than 2 action steps they can take today, starting tomorrow, what we can do to get this thing back on track.
Well, if we understand who they are, that's the first thing. You've got to get involved and find out who the enemy is. How can you defeat the enemy if you don't know who he is? This book, more than any other book I've seen, will tell you that. Here's what this book does that others don't. Every newscaster that I see, every person who's written a book, they talk about current events. This talks about hundreds of years of history and puts the puzzle pieces together. It empowers you. So the answer is you have to become empowered by taking the time to learn what's been done to us. Because once you learn what's been done to us, you know how to fix it. So that's the key thing. We don't have to get down to the minutia. We just have to know what's been done. The truth will set us free. Now, in another session, if you want, we can go down bullet point by bullet point. I mean, there's things like get rid of gerrymandering. We can take back our border. There's a whole list of things we can do to get back our elective system. I mean, all of that is in the book. All of that and much, much, much more.
I always say thank the good Lord for COVID because it allowed people all over America, tens of millions of people, to wake up and see what's going on. It did me, and I know that, I think I'll speak for Randy, but I think he and I both are in the process of unraveling and unlearning what we've been fed for, 35 years we've been alive, because we're young, or at least we feel young. So
I'm probably almost as old as the two of you put together.
We're really older than 35. I just wanted to trick you.
I want to say this, man. This is so overwhelming because I love the fact that it's coming from God. I mean, this is the most clear it's ever been presented to me.
Oh, it's so clear.
And Larry, I'm looking so forward to future episodes. Even more so when I binge watch some of those old Netflix episodes that I've quit doing.
All those as we go through Hollywood?
Yeah, I quit doing that.
As we go through, we can have one whole session. What do we need to do to save America? But I think what is really on people's mind right now, everybody asks me, I'm afraid of China. Is China gonna defeat us? So maybe what we do next time is we talk about why, emphatically, absolutely, without the slightest shadow of a doubt, God's hand is going to fall and China is going to fall. We don't need to be afraid of them. I think that would give people a lot of peace, and I think that they would understand the distinction between America and China and why God is not going to use a demonically controlled CCP to control the world. He is going to use a republic. Our republic is going to be restored.
Well, Larry, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I know when you sent us your press kit, there were multiple bullet points, and I told Randy, I said, man, we could have Larry as our de facto, repeat guest on we could have you on for weeks and weeks and weeks as a repeat guest to come on and talk about each one of these things and break it down a little deeper. But I'm looking forward to that because I just think that people need to hear it, and it's going to be stuff that they've never heard before. And so far, Randy, I don't know what you think, but Larry's the best person to give that to our audience.
Oh, yeah, and I'm just sitting there thinking, if they feel like I do, they're on the edge of their seat waiting for the next one. So stay tuned.
I'm ready for Chapter 5 starting tonight. Okay, Larry, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Keep your eyes and ears open to what the Lord's telling you to do, and keep this train moving, man. It's going in the right direction.
You guys are fun. I think people will like your show and come back for more and more and more.
Well, they may like the show. I don't know if they'll like us, but that's we hope they will. But anyway, all right, Larry. Thanks. We're going to have you back on. All right.
Bye bye.
All right.
Thank
see you later. Take care. Thanks for watching another exciting episode of Patriots with Grit. We want to keep you informed, so if you would, just go over to patriotswithgrit.com and give us your first name and your email so we can keep you up to date. Also, be sure to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep bringing you truth. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.